Okay, you want to get the microphone on in the other room? When I give you the down cue,
would you please?
Wait till I give you the cue.
Thank you.
All right. When I say 3, everybody say along with us. Sing at the top of your lungs so the whole world would hear WRIF in Detroit. Okay.
Since 1971.
Oh wow, it's Jimi Hendrix. Oh wow. All right, listen, I've been trying to think of a way to bring in the new year, and so we just played the Star Spangled Banner by Hendrix for a while. All this just weirdness, right?
The home of rock and roll throughout the 70s and into the 80s.
That's tonight's Riff Rarity on WRIF 101 FM from The Who. Sounding a little bit different there. On Monday, Riff Rarities returns once again with a rare acoustic song from Greg Allman, so that should be nice to listen to.
Detroit's only real rock and roll radio station in the decade of the 90s.
It's quitting time!
If it rocks, it's on the riff in the early part of the 21st century.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann Carlini here with Steve Black and Meltdown, and welcome as we celebrate the life of Chris Cornell. I know you were as shocked as I was when I found out that Chris Cornell had passed.
For nearly 50 years, we are, have been, and continue to be 101 WRIF. Memories of the nation's favorites. Everything that rocks.
Welcome to the podcast, The History of WRIF, in which we're taking a look at the people and the personalities that made the riff, the riff, and so cool over 50 years. I'm Mike Staff. I'm your host. I had the privilege of being a DJ on the riff for 14 years, from 1992 to 2006. And my guest today...
And why was that?
Why is what?
How did you get the job at RIF?
At RIF? That's a really interesting story. Dick Kernen is joining us right now. I got the story. I got the job at RIF from contacts that I made through my first internship at WLLZ.
You little devil.
Dick Kernen, very well known for his incredible 47 years at Spexhauer School of Media Arts. It was just a DJ school at the time when you started.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that there's no doubt in my mind that there's no Detroit radio broadcaster over the last 50 years that doesn't know who you are. But our listeners may not be as familiar with your name or your contribution to the RIF or to the Detroit radio industry as a whole. And I think it's safe to say there simply isn't anyone alive that knows more about the Detroit radio market than you, Dick.
Well, it's very nice of you to say.
After being the first program director on WRIF, and then widely known as the man who hired Arthur P., and then, of course, a great career at Spexhauer.
Now, are you involved in the show that I heard that he did?
Yes. I interviewed Arthur's show. Yep.
I listened to that whole show and I'm going, are you nuts? You've known this guy for 1,000 years. What are you listening? And it was just a great job. Way to go.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. It's great to be here in the RIF studios again, and we've known each other for better than 30 years. We've never had an opportunity to share a microphone or be kind of on the air together.
I always felt bad because I always thought of you as the guy that was wandering around Traverse City going, does anyone have a job? I'm out here starving to death.
Well, and for our listeners, that's in response to a story I told Dick once about in between jobs in radio. I would do anything to get a couple of bucks to pay the bills, and it ended up paying off. Sacrifices are definitely worth it.
Well, I think you got a lot of company.
Well, I did, and I got to tell you, Dick, one of the things that really stuck with me on my first day of Spexhauer, you came in and talked to our class, and you gave your first day of school speech, and you said, listen, here's the deal. If you want to be in radio, you're going to work overnights, you're going to work holidays, you're going to make minimum wage, you're going to work at radio formats you hate, people are going to get promoted over you for no good reason,
you're
going to get fired. Yep.
And nobody walked out.
Yeah, and you said, that's the deal, and I thought to myself, well, if that's the price of admission, I'm in. Yeah. So all of those things happened to me at one point in my career, and I just thought, well, par for the course. I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, just what he told us.
Right. So it's mind-boggling to think, Dick, that you started out your radio career in Detroit in 1956.
Right out of high school.
Right out of high school. Tell me.
With a fresh haircut. Thank you very much, U.S. Navy Reserve.
Tell me about getting into radio and what radio was like in 1956.
First of all, I went to boot camp, okay, because I was in the Navy Reserve. And so I came back, and I was your basic long-haired, noble-fair, leaping gnome. But, boy, I had this swell haircut. And there was an ad in the paper, which I still have, by the way, wanted office boy with car and liability insurance. And I thought, I got the car, I got the insurance, and I got a haircut. Wow.
And that was for a radio station.
That was
WXYZ.
for WXYZ. And so, I mean, I was hireable. I mean, I walked in there and said, hi, and I got my little slick haircut. 6 months later, the program director said, what happened to the guy I hired that had a haircut?
Because you grew it.
Yeah, it grew back.
All you did is cut your hair just to get the job.
And I thought, boy, you really pulled one off here. And then they said, you're going on active duty at the end of the year.
Oh, really?
And I said, no. And so I quit. Yeah, I quit the U.S. Navy Reserve.
Oh, you had the option to quit.
Don't do that. No, you didn't.
Oh, okay.
As I found out, as I was carried to the airport the end of December to get on the plane, stupid.
So did you get on the plane?
Oh, hell yes. I was in the Caribbean on a ship for most of 2 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And then you came back to Detroit.
And back in those days, they had to give you your job back.
They had to, yeah.
So I walked in and said, it's me, and I'm back. And they said, good, we just opened a new place out on 10 Mile Road, and we've got an opening in the mailroom. So see you bye. And so I went out to what's now Broadcast House, and we had both radio stations and the TV station there.
Well, it's beautiful when you talk about having to pay your dues to make it in this business. I mean, that's where you start the mailroom, right?
Yep, there you go, in the mailroom. And when I went out, that building on 10 Mile Road was a brand new building. And I went back, wow. And so I went in the mailroom, and the next thing you know, they taught me how to run a board. And so I was a record spinner for many years.
Without being on the air, you were just playing the music.
Yeah, just playing commercials and stuff like that.
And was there not live DJs playing the songs?
Oh, sure,
Okay.
absolutely. And I was a board op.
Oh, so there are other people that were introducing the songs.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, oh, no, not me.
Yeah.
Just didn't seem to have the voice. Anyway, so I worked there not very long before they needed somebody to, be a board op, and so I was a board op for a long time. And then the FCC said, we just did a count, and we've got tens of thousands of FM frequencies that no one is doing anything with but simulcasting. So starting on X date, you either send the license back or start doing something else. And so the guy that was the general manager of the station said, well, Dick, we think we're going to make you the program director of our FMs. And I said, I don't want to be a Dick, we don't know what we're going to do with you if you don't take this job. Oh, pick me.
In that case, you put it that way, it sounds really good.
So I just automatically got promoted to the program director of what became WRIF a year or so later.
So then what was the format like on WXYZ FM when you first took over before it was WRIF?
I think we called it whatever. Everything that didn't get played on AM and had to be at least 5 minutes long.
Right.
And so we were right out there.
And that was like free-form radio.
Oh, baby.
That
was it ever.
Now, WABX was a rock station, and they were...
But they were pretty much the same thing we were.
They were?
Yeah.
Okay.
But they just been at it longer, and they kind of opened the door.
I see.
But there was a difference. We were owned by ABC. We had money,
Right.
honey.
Right, that's a big difference.
So we waved bye-bye to them.
So a year after you became the program director of XYZ FM, you changed the format or you changed the call letters to WRIF.
RIF.
How did you ever get those call letters? Because they have got to be the best call letters in rock radio. In fact, I heard Howard Stern talking recently about there are no better call letters for a rock station than the RIF, WRIF.
And he's right.
He is right.
And you know who thought they were dumb?
Who? You did?
I said, WRIF? Are you serious?
Did you put together the riff, the whole riff thing? Or no you weren't even thinking it?
I don't deserve the credit for any of that. Isn't it amazing how anybody can last this long in the business and be this stupid?
Well, all you got to do is make some big right decisions, and the rest can be a little bit dumb. You know?
Well, when you think of one of those, let me know.
Coming up.
What was Arthur like to manage? Because the Arthur I know is a rebel, and he just kind of like marches to the beat of his own drum.
Yeah. Look in your glossary under pain in the ass.
No, I know that you said that you just didn't like managing people, and that's one of the reasons you got out of programming. Was Arthur? Were you pointing that at Arthur?
Not really, but you know, he had other company. He had Jerry Lubin and Dan Carlisle.
When the Jay Giles Band played Pine Knob, Peter Wolf gave Arthur Penhollow his exclusive Detroit interview. When the Stones announced their Detroit dates, RIF's Lynn Woodison was there to give you the whole story. When the Tigers got hot, Eli had Kirk Gibson in the studio for Night Call. When Billy Squire came to town, Ken Calvert was the only Detroit personality to have him in the studio. When the Stones played their first tour date in Philadelphia, JJ was on the scene at JFK Stadium phoning in live reports. The morning crew, Calvert, Penhollow, Costan, Savelli, Coffey, Woodison, Zarrett. We get the information first and we get it right. WRIF. No one knows Detroit rock and roll better.
101. WRIF.
Legendary personalities from Detroit's iconic WRIF.
This album's called Naturally. It's by J.J. Cale, with special thanks to Carl Radel, Denny Cordell, Leon Russell, and Joel Heyman.
You called me to breathe. I keep low.
With Mike Staff and our special guest, former program director Dick Kernen.
Well, you did make a really good call. You found a legendary air talent.
Cicero Grimes.
Come on. Better known as Arthur Penhollow. Do you remember meeting him? How did that whole thing come together?
I don't know how I tripped over him. I think maybe we were publicizing it some way. But this guy said, "Hi, my name is Arthur Penhollow." And I thought, "Oh, yeah, you're hired."
Oh, because his voice was so deep.
Oh,
yeah.
baby.
That's all it took. You heard his voice?
Hey, I'm a sucker. Well, you have to understand, back then, you didn't find people wanting to be on a what station? F what?
Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, nobody, huh? And Arthur was at another, he was in the Howell station.
He was in Howell, yeah.
Well, you're
HMI.
good. You're good. So he was, delighted and was more than willing to go back to his real name. So,
What was Arthur like to manage? Because the Arthur I know is a rebel, and he just kind of like marches to the beat of his own drum.
Yeah. Look in your glossary under pain in the ass.
No, I know that you said that you just didn't like managing people, and that's one of the reasons you got out of programming. Was Arthur? Were you pointing that at Arthur?
Not really, but he had other company. He had Jerry Lubin and Dan Carlisle. I have to tell you this story about. I ran into Dan Carlisle, who was in town a couple months ago, and I said, I remember when I hired you. You were working in Chicago at an ABC station, and you had been working here. So I called the station because it was an ABC station. I said, I'd like to make him an offer. And there's dead silence. And I said, "Hello?" He said, "Well, Dick, I have to tell you something about Dan Carlisle." And I said, "What's that?" He's a communist. Well, I held the phone away from myself, managed not to fall off my chair, and I said, "I'll take a chance."
It's incredible. So Valentine's Day of 1971, RIF became the RIF as we know it. Did the format change or just the call letters? You were kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, just the call letters.
Mm-hmm. What was the rest of the landscape like in Detroit? You did have ABX and
well,
put
you had
them
ABX,
out, and then W4 was
and W4
trying to do rock.
Right.
What was RIF doing different?
What RIF was doing different was waiving money. You see, WABX disappeared into the ether, and the same with W4.
Yeah.
Kind of disappeared into the ether. And, of course, we were ABC. Thank you very much.
Right.
Do we have a budget? Why, of course
Yes.
we have a budget. We're ABC.
Well, and some of the stuff that ABC did for RIF at that time was really nobody was doing in Detroit, but I think that ABC was probably putting that kind of money on other stations around the country. But
they were, let me be clear. They did that all over the country.
Well, and I would guess that other companies may not have taken that frequency seriously because they were focusing on the AM. And when ABC comes in and puts some money on the FM, was it easier to win?
I'm not sure. I think they weren't the only company that said, we got because they were forced to use the frequency. That was the thing.
I got
is
it.
that there was no way out of it.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the Detroit radio market. I always think it's like the most competitive radio market in the country, and it might just be because it was the market that I was competing in. But is Detroit radio different than other markets in terms of the Not at all.
Not at all.
How about from a rock radio standpoint? Because it's always been fiercely competitive. Is it the same thing around the country?
It's pretty fiercely competitive in Phoenix and San Diego.
Yeah. What do you think it is about the Detroit radio listeners that make them so loyal to the radio stations that they choose?
I think it's the radio stations. I mean, listeners have no reason to be loyal to a radio station if they're not doing something they can't wait to hear. And so, stations have figured that out a long time ago and given people a reason to go to FM.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some morning show radio. But first, can you explain to our listeners why the morning show is such an important day part for a radio station?
Oh, because people get up in the morning, they want to hear the traffic reports, they want to hear the weather reports. There's a reason for them to get up. And radio stations historically have always made sure that the morning personalities were very, very strong personalities. And that's not any different here than it is in other markets.
Sure.
If you're in San Diego and you're the morning guy on the rock station or whatever station's number one, you're going to have a lot of listeners.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there was several different people doing mornings on the RIF in the 70s, but none of them quite really kicked in the way that JJ and the Morning Crew did. I think they were the first real big morning show on RIF. What do you think it is about JJ and George that made
I just
them
think
so
that,
awesome?
they had the same thing any great air talent has. It's magic. You want to sit and explain to me in 25 words or less why Arthur is a legend?
Yeah.
Huh? Is it because of his wit? I doubt it. I mean, it's a magic thing that air talent has.
Well, and there was so much spontaneity in Arthur's life when, I asked, hey, when's the first time you played Baby? He said Baby. It just kind of came out of a Jay Giles song. Or when's the first time you yelled, It's the Weekend? It just kind of happened,
Right.
You can't plan that kind of
And why
magic.
did you go to Hawaii all the time?
Right.
Well, because I'm from there.
Right. One of the things that stands out for me for JJ, and I guess probably any successful morning show, is the amount of show prep that goes into it. I don't know if listeners realize that for every 4 hours on the air, there's...
Well, when you think about the reason people are tuning in is for the weather and the traffic, but also what the hell happened last night?
Sure.
Did World War III start, or what the hell is going on?
Right.
So the morning shows are very important.
Well, yeah, and they can get their weather and traffic from any station on the dial.
Of course.
But they want to hear it from somebody that they relate to, and that's kind of getting them up in a good mood.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah. So tell me about Dave and Chuck the Freak.
I knew them when they were Canadians, okay? And I knew there was something going on there because everybody seemed to know who they were. And I'm saying, they're on this silly, Windsor station here. Why does everyone know these guys?
Right.
And all of a sudden they disappeared. And I called them and I said, what's going on? Well, we're just kind of taking a break. Well, what the deal was, their contract with Canadian stations said, "Thou shalt not leave us," or leave the market until you put in 6 months. So they had 6 months where they were just kind of
they had their no compete going.
Happy dance.
Yeah.
And they are just great people.
Yeah. Well deserving of the success.
Dave is just a great, great guy. And, we were fairly friendly, and I'm trying to remember why, but my senility's kicking in. But I knew him, just phone call-wise. Mm-hmm. And he was just always very nice guy, no big ego thing.
Yeah.
Sure has worked for him.
Coming up.
Radio has changed so much since you
You've
were
noticed.
in the mailroom at WXYZ in 1956. How would you say that social media and Spotify and the YouTubes and all of these choices, how do you suppose that has changed radio?
Well, it's given a lot of people who worked in radio something else to do. Radio stations are still delivering, depending on who they are, what they are, and everything else. And the people that used to work in radio now can work in these much smaller venues and still do very well.
The history of WRIF. The podcast is brought to you by the Specs Howard School of Media Arts.
We had a staff of about 6 or 7 air people, one of whom was stranger than the next. The stuff that was really outrageous in 1970, today just kind of you see it in the department store or wherever.
Legendary personalities from Detroit's iconic WRIF.
You have to remember that in 1970, this country was in the midst of an incredible cultural revolution. The thing about the generation gap and the difficulty in the two younger people communicating with older people, was a very serious problem. All of my people wore funny clothes. They all had very long hair. Barbara had a ring in her nose. They were bizarre people.
With Mike Staff and our special guest, former program director Dick Kernen.
You've got a relationship with so many radio broadcasters around the country, but
you think?
I'm pretty sure. Can you rattle off some names of some of the past Specs Howard students that have had pretty good success in Detroit or around the country that our listeners might know some of their names?
Oh, God. Well, there were a couple of them here in town. Two people that sadly died within a month of each other were Joe Wade Formicola and Linda Lee. But there are people all over the country that are from here. A lot of people are in places you would never believe. I discovered the Howl radio station, okay? Because I noticed that people never left. And I'm thinking, oh, Howl? Am I crazy?
Right.
And so I was up there, and the program director, he became the owner, was just one of the best people I've ever known. And I said, I'm going to call Gary Graff down at the Free Press and have him do an article on the station. He fell off his chair on his knees. He said, Dick, I'm begging you, don't. I said, what, you're a great radio station? He said, Dick, don't. And I said, what's your problem? He said, my problem is if you do that and he prints it, next week I'm going to have 10 Detroit radio stations up here calling on the advertisers in Howell. And I mean, Howell, to this day, most of the people that work there are grads, and they never leave.
Yeah, they found a great job. Why would they?
It's a great market.
Yeah. Job security is not something that is one of the perks of being in radio. That is for sure. However, at the RIF, that hasn't necessarily been the case. When you think that I was at RIF for 14 years, Arthur P. for almost 40 years, Drew and Mike for essentially 22 years, Ann Carlini for almost 30 years, Screamin' Scott and Meltdown both have almost 25 years. Steve Black has 15. What do you suppose it is about RIF that?
Well, I'm not sure Steve is a grad.
Steve, are you a grad? No. Oh, but he does have the job security.
I mean, I hate to pull a plug, but I know the woman you loved.
Oh, of course.
Anyway, stations create their own accountability.
So radio has changed so much since you were in the mail room at WXYZ in 1956. How would you say that social media and Spotify and the YouTubes and all of these choices, how do you suppose that has changed radio?
Well, it's given a lot of people who worked in radio something else to do. I mean, the reality today is that there are just so many areas that people can listen to that, you wonder why there's a radio station on the air. But radio stations are still delivering, depending on who they are, what they are, and everything else. And the people that used to work in radio now can work in these much smaller venues and still do very well.
Yeah.
Even, though that they're not, Dick Burton.
Right.
But they do very well in these smaller venues.
Well, and radio has always had this uncanny ability to reinvent itself. I mean, when TV first came out, people were like, well, radio's gone. Who wants to listen to radio if you can watch it on TV, right?
Well, sound just like a lot of people I knew.
But you just adapt, and it is good because while the consolidation in the radio market has eliminated a lot of the jobs from terrestrial radio, like you said, it opened it up in all these other areas, and that's exciting.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you can, you don't need to be the number one radio station to make a decent living doing a much smaller, operation.
Right. What has stayed the same about radio that hasn't changed?
I think the thing that hasn't changed is how important the air talent is. I heard the thing on Art. I listened to the whole thing, and I said, how did he pull this off? And he was working for me.
Right.
And he was, I don't know how, I mean, that's a magic thing that some people have and other people try for half their life and never pull it off.
That's true. Yeah, there's almost like this emotional response to it because when Detroit listeners heard Arthur yell, "It's the weekend," like you knew it was time. It was party time, go time, right?
What a guy. I loved that interview. Was that you?
That was, yeah.
I mean, well handled. It was great.
I appreciate that.
I'm sitting there, and I'm about 40 minutes into it, and I'm saying, hello, this guy worked for you for a very long time, and you haven't turned the radio off. You're nuts.
So what do you think the future of radio is?
I think it's going to be pretty much like it's been. I think that the people that are strong personalities are always going to be there. I think that the people that go into other parts of the business are going to find that they can make a really decent living with an audience that was that's a fraction the size of what they were used to when they were, the morning drive guy on a big station.
Yeah, now that WRIF is approaching soon, in a couple of years, its 50th birthday, what do you attribute almost 50 years
You really
of
had to bring this up, didn't you?
It makes you feel a little old, doesn't it?
Did you notice?
But there are not very many radio stations anywhere that have had the same format, the same call letters, and the same market for 50 years.
Yeah, there are some others, but
There's a few.
WRIF is certainly unique. You had to talk about the 50 years, didn't you?
Well, and you've got plus that in this business. It's so absolutely amazing, Dick. When you look back on your career, what is most gratifying for you?
I think just for a bunch of reasons, I left WRIF. And it was one of the reasons. I hate managing, okay? Mm-hmm. And I was managing. And I had to tell people when to be where. And I thought, this really blows.
It feels like babysitting.
Yeah. And so I had started a little weird part-time thing at some place called the Specs Howard School. I've been there 50 years.
That's incredible.
Because Specs Howard defines the term integrity. He is a great guy. He still comes in a couple times a week, and he's doesn't get around real well. He's just a great guy and as I say, integrity is what he's all about.
Does he still come in dressed with a tie? And
No, we kind of passed it. We both have this is how much our lives have changed. We just moved into a new facility earlier this year, and we share an office.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Do we really need 2 offices for these clowns? I don't think so. Just put them in the same office.
Nick, Dick, I think one of the definitions of a life well lived is what kind of contribution you have left behind, what kind of wake is behind you, and just walking upstairs into the studio with you and seeing when people see you, they recognize you instantly, they know you. They have such a affinity for you. You've helped so many people in a career that
I've had 50 years to do it.
50 years to do it, but that must be really rewarding.
Oh yeah, I cannot tell you how important that is as a contribution for getting up in the morning and seeing the number of people who are successful in the business that got their first jobs, present company included.
Right.
Did you ever get a first job?
My first job was at, you probably remember WBRB AM out in Mount Clemens. It was a little 500-watt AM radio station.
No, I remember it.
And I remember you once gave the analogy, 500-watt AM. Go home, look at your hair dryer. It's got 1,200 watts.
Just wanted to keep your ego from getting carried away.
Exactly. And it was a lot of what you set me up for. I mean, it was a format that, it was Barbara Streisand type of music, AC, and I didn't want to play that, but I was so happy to be on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's a magical career. It really is. And it just always makes my day to see people like you that have made a whole career out of it.
Well, and in show business, integrity is not really a word that's used very often. And you were mentioning how Specs has the utmost of integrity. And I think that you taught that as well, because one of the things I remember you teaching us was to just be cool and be nice to everyone. Don't burn bridges. You never know when you're going to come in contact with these people again. And you always had this spirit of just be nice to people in a very competitive industry.
Sure. No, I have always felt that way. I have loved this business all my life. I could not have gone to work for anyone better than Specs Howard. I mean, when I look back upon people like you, I knew you when you were a kid.
It's amazing. And amazing how fast it goes, even for me, but I'm sure when you look back, it's like, wow.
It's amazing to me to walk in and see you and go, who's this guy?
Don't blink. It goes by fast. Well, it's one of my privileges to call you a friend. It's been a privilege to have this conversation with you, Dick.
It's been a privilege to be asked to do it.
Well, it would be impossible to have a podcast called The History of WRIF without including you as part of that archive. Thanks, Dick. God bless you, brother.
Thank you very much for having me.
Next time.
One of my favorite times, George will remember this like the back of his hand. The real Dick the Bruiser came to town, and we were going to shoot some TV commercials, so we took him to the Detroit Zoo.
Actually, I think that was later in the deal. I remember Bruiser, with several stories we can tell you about Bruiser coming into town. Yeah, we took him to the Detroit Zoo. And
but all of us were there, the whole...
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we did that commercial. That's right, we did There's Good Rockin' at Riff. That was the bit. Hey, there's good rockin' at Riff. Like Good Rockin' at Midnight was the tune. So.
But he had us push him around in a wheelchair the entire way. We're walking around the zoo, and the Bruiser insisted.
He just didn't feel like walking?
I got my big lollipop here. JJ can push me around, make sure I don't get lost.
Now, was the Bruiser character, was that in play before you got to Riff? That was still...
Yeah.
Was that a Steve Dahl thing?
That was Steve Dahl's bodyguard.
Yep. Oh, okay.
The original concept was Dick the Bruiser was Steve Dahl's bodyguard. Now, I was doing Dick the Bruiser for Steve off the air, and he's, what the hell's that? Well, again, being from Detroit, I knew because when I was 6 years old, I was watching Lord Layton on Channel 9 with Dick the Bruiser and the Sheik and all those guys.
The History of WRIF. The podcast is brought to you by the Specs Howard School of Media Arts.